Khalsa Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh Ji. Welcome to yet another session. Khoj Gurbani, this is Ravinder Singh here, joining you from Columbus, trying to facilitate the walking through the 21st passage of Asa Ki Vaar. So with that said, we'll follow our usual sort of convention of reading the passages and then going back with a simple English translation, or shall I say rendition, and then open it up to some further discussion. So that said, allow me to begin by reading the passages. And this is Salok Mahalla Duja. Ehek nahi aashiki duje lage jaye, nanak aashik kaandiye sad hi rahe samaye, ਚੰਗੇ ਚੰਗਾ ਕਰ ਮੰਨੇ ਮੰਦੇ ਮੰਦਾ ਹੋਏ, ਆਸ਼ਿਕ ਇਹ ਨਾ ਆਖੀਐ ਜੇ ਲਿਖੇ ਵਰਤੇ ਸੋਏ। ਮਹੱਲਾ ਦੂਜਾ। ਸਲਾਮ ਜਵਾਬ ਦੋਵੇ ਕਰੇ ਮੁੰਡੋਂ ਖੁੱਥਾ ਜਾਏ, ਨਾਨਕ ਦੋਵੇ ਕੂੜੀਆਂ ਥਾਏ ਨ ਕਾਈ ਪਾਏ। ਪੌੜੀ। ਜਿਤ ਸੇਵੀਐ ਸੁਖ ਪਾਈਐ ਸੋ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸਦਾ ਸੰਭਾਲੀਐ, ਜਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਪਾਈਏ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਾ ਘਾਲ ਬੁਰੀ ਕਿਉਂ ਘਾਲੀਐ। ਮੰਦਾ ਮੂਲ ਨਾ ਕੀਚਈ ਜੇ ਲੰਮੀ ਨਦਰ ਨਿਹਾਲੀਐ, ਜਿਉ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨਾਲ ਨਾ ਹਾਰੀਐ ਤੇ ਵੇਹਾ ਪਾਸਾ ਢਾਲੀਐ, ਕਿ ਛਲਾਹੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਕਾਲੀਐ। So these are the passages. If we just go back to the top again to where he starts off by saying ek nahi aashki duje lage jaye. So I see this as an interrogation, basically saying ek nahi aashki, ek adi aashki hai. In other words, what sort of love is this that you are still also hanging on or in love with the other? And I think the notion here is that the other is the duja, and the duja in Gurbani pretty much means the world, Maya. So at the very outset, with an interrogation, we are being sort of given the idea that there is a difference between love of the Akal Purakh and love of Maya. So ek nahi aashki duje lage paaye, nanak aashik kaandiye sad hi rahe samaye. So again, here's the definition of an ashik. Ashik, by the way, is a word. Ashik and ashki is a word that appears in various forms in Gurbani. Might add, it means love and lover, and we know that there are plenty of words used like prem, preet, bhakti, sneh, chao, pao. I mean, these are all synonyms to ashik and ashki. So that said, so he's giving us a definition here. Nanak ashik kandiye. Who is an ashik? Who is a true lover? Sadhi rahe samay. One who is sadhi rahe samay. I read this as one who is attuned to or living in accord with hukum. And then the following line is, the following two lines rather, is change changa kar manne mande manda hoye, ashik ena akhiye je lekhe varte soye. In other words, he's given you a definition that an ashik or a lover, a true lover, is one who is forever in accord with hukum, and one who is who's engaged in accounting for the good and the bad, is really not an ashik. Changa changa kar manne mande manda hoye. So in other words, ashik e na akhiye je lekhe varte. So one who's sort of accounting for the good deeds as as good and the bad as bad, because walking in hukum means you just accept what comes your way. And then onwards, salam jawab dove kare muddho kutha jaye. Again, another example of someone who appears as someone, if you want to receive wisdom or even receive a salary from someone, you're not expected to sort of counter them. You can't play both ends of the stick. So he's bringing out that example again. Nanak dove kudiyan thai na kai pai. In other words, he's saying that you're in error right from the very start. You're fundamentally wrong. And then comes the Pauri. So I want to skip to the last lines here because I think that that is where at least to me, the understanding of these passages is. And I like the way he says, Manda mool na kichai, de lammi nadar nihaliye. This line is sort of very significant to me because what is being said here is, in these lines is, don't be don't be a loser. In other words, have the foresight, have the vision. Lammi nazar nihaliye to me is to have the vision of a future. And I think this is applicable at all levels of our life. Is to think through your actions, be successful in what you do, and play the game in the way that it should be played, where he says, "Jo sahib naal na hariye, teveva pasa taliye." Now, pasa is an old chess game, right? A chess-like game. So when you're playing a game, make sure that your moves are thought out, that you're playing the game according to the rules, that you have a vision of where you're going and what you're doing. And that, I think, constitutes the sort of the guidance in this 21st passage. Because in the end, he's saying, "Kichalai upar kaliye." In other words, whatever it is that you're going to do should bring some value, some profit. I mean, it should profit you, whether it is by adding value, uh, some benefit. So all of your actions, which should be aligned to playing the game the way the game ought to be played, should in the end result in some value. So this is in a very generic sort of way that I'm presenting it to you. And the other thing that I think these passages are conveying at the very beginning are the idea of who a true lover is. And it's important to remember that love in Sikhi is not the romantic love that we might be familiar with. In Sikhi, love is a principle of self transcendence. It is something that will enable you to change and transform. And so I just went through the many synonyms that are used in Gurbani for love. But there is also in Gurbani instruction on how to actually be a lover. And, the example of a chatrik, is used, I think, many places. So that sort of longing one should have. One should feel the pang of separation, as Farid has said, Birha Birha Kiya Birha Tu Sultan. In fact, he says that one who has not felt this separation is actually as good as a masan or a dead corpse. So I think we need to keep that in the backdrop that love, when we use the word love, we are not talking about romantic love. We are using love here as a principle of change and a principle of self-transcendence and the love. So when you love Akal Purakh, it follows from there that you unconditionally then love all of creation because it is not distinct from him. So some of the thoughts that I want to throw out there are, the difference between worldly love versus love for Akal Purakh, conditional versus unconditional love. So when they talk about, you know, एक नहीं आश की दूजे लगे जाए. Duje, of course, it's another way of saying that you can't really serve two masters at the same time. So you've got to, you can only serve one master. So when you love Akal Purakh, you're basically loving Hukam. When you're loving Hukam, what that simply means is that you are not, that you're trying to bring your life to be in consonance with Hukam. And that is something that we all need to do in our lives. That is essentially my take on these passages. So with that, let me go back here. Randeep Singh ji.
Anjali, thank you for going through the passages and explaining them. I have a comment on, or I rather want to expand on what you mentioned for the first slok, and then I have three questions for you.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
so I would like to expand on the last two lines of the first passage, especially "आसक एना आँखिए जे लिखे वर्ते सोए." I think you touched on this part where you said the true lover is who is always in accord with hukam. And the way I would like to translate or understand these lines is with the help of the word preference. So, in my understanding, the word lekha means, or lekha likhna is to have preference, changa or manda, good or bad, or any kind of preference. So, I think in the last line, Guru Sahib is saying ki, as you said, like the true lovers are those who are always in accord in hukam and they don't have a preference. They don't play in preference. Likhe varte soe. Right. So I just wanted to put that out. And so the three questions that I have for you is the first one is
That's three too many for me.
okay, Vijay, you can do it. So the first one is I think we have spoken about it, right? The word here being sadhi, rahe samay, and we have often discussed this on this forum as well that it's a circular, it's not a linear process, and we are here, we are doing Gurbani Vichar or we are in Sangat, we are doing something. So we are either already there or we are in the process. But in my reading of this passage, Guru Sahib is saying like the true lovers, Asak, are those who are always there. So it's a binary state. It's either there or not. It's not halfway. That's the message I'm getting. I hope this comment makes sense to you. Maybe you would want to address it. Uh,
Uh, Yeah, I mean, I think just let me address the whole preference bit. I think you've said it better than I could have, but essentially the idea is the same. I mean, one who's in Hukam really is not either accounting for good or bad, or really doesn't have a preference. It's just accepting things as they come, right? So I think you just said it a little more eloquently. As far as Rehe Samay, it's a binary thing. I would actually go a step further and say that we already are in this in Ekonkar, if you want to put it that way. It is just a question of some of us are aware and awakened to that idea that we are, and some of us are not. This is where the idea of Duja comes in, right? Because we are still there is still a mental calculus. We are still living in the world of opposites, and we can't and there is really nothing that is opposite of this one, and that's the idea that our minds can't get wrapped around. But it's like it's like a fish being inside of an ocean. There is nothing outside of the ocean, but I guess we either don't recognize that or are asleep to that idea. But yeah, and I think that those who are awakened, the gurmukhs, let's say, are aware of this. So yes, you're either in it or not awake to it. I would say that you're always in it. You're just not. You haven't just realized that.
uh,
I mean, how could you be outside of it, right? You couldn't.
right. I agree with that. Uh,
Right?
the next question that I have is on the second slok, Salam Jawab Dobe Kare. I was not very clear on the interpretation that you helped put forward. Especially, it says Salam Jawab Dove and then Nanak Dove Kuriya. So what is so? It seems to me in the second line he is referring Dove to Salam Jawab. So what kind of Salam Jawab he is talking about specifically with context to these passages, and how are they Kuriya?
I would. I'm a little loath to actually offer an answer right off the bat here. May I suggest that we open this up to the forum as well, so that we can maybe get into a dialogue about it.
Sure,
If that, yeah.
sure. Do you want me to put forward the third
Yeah,
question?
just put it out there so that we can so that it doesn't become a conversation between you and I.
Sure. So in the third body, as you mentioned that de lammi nazar ne haliye. seems to be a key message, and it can be interpreted and implemented in our lives at multiple levels. But my question to you is, in the spiritual context, in this body, when he is saying in accord with hukam, what exactly the lammi nazar nihaliye mean in this spiritual context? Thank you.
Excellent question. And I will have to tell you, since Inderpreet is here, I first heard this explanation of this line from none other than Sardar Inderpreet Singh. So I'm going to reserve this for him to expound on. This was many years ago, and I heard him expound on Asa Ki Vaar, and he explained this line in this way, and it has stuck with me. And I've sort of, kind of tried to elaborate on that in my own mind, but I leave it for him. So before we get to him, I'm just following a sequence here. Dilpreet Singh, you've heard Chetan Deep's, queries and criticisms of my uh, expose here. Your thoughts?
Hanji Virji. So this Sadhi Rahe Samay, or it comes many times that 24/7 we have to do Naam Simran, or this Hukam we have to be always in that, in the connection. So whenever I see this, the way I look at it is that what is the moral or teaching of these type of messages. So the way I take that don't only be good or do something good in a specific time or in a specific place, or when someone is watching you. I think the teaching is that we have to behave or be consistent when nobody is watching. Like, example is that if I am in a gurdwara, the way I communicate with others is different. I feel the presence there, or I am afraid of something. But when I am outside of gurdwara, I don't care that if somebody needs help or not, but inside the gurdwara I want to help you even if somebody don't needs help, right? So sadhi rahe samay means is that it should be that our behaviors and actions and other things, reflections, should be outside of place and time always, and either if somebody is watching us or not, or wherever we are. And then he asked a question on salam jawab dome kare. I think the way I will take is that we agree with something, but we don't believe in it, because this Gurbani, every time there are examples in there. The first body also is talking about the relationship, and sometimes we will have the examples from how a farmer is working, but there will be a hidden message in that. So again, salam jawab is that okay, sometimes you question and sometimes you agree, right? So that is that okay, we agree with it, but we don't believe in it, because if we start believing in something, then that is the next level. I think that is the hidden message there, that we have to cross that agreement and start believing in whatever we agree with, and then this process will be smooth, and then we'll be outside of this transactional thing. Thank you, Virji.
Haji, thank you very much, Dilpreet, for those insights. And I think you make a very good point indeed, that the moral imperative, as you're talking about, the ethical sort of norms of doing good when no one is watching is indeed the point of being Sadhir Samai, because that is what a Gurmukh is. He's acting out of a sense, from within. There are no external incentives or stimulants, that stimulus that causes him to act in a way that is desirable. So absolutely. And I'll leave the salam jawab open because I don't really have a comment on that. So somebody hopefully will pick on it. So Inderpreet Singh, let's sort of nudge you a little bit about the Nadar Lammi Nadar Nihaliye. I remember you sort of explaining this to me in Boston many years ago.
So I really okay. I've, like I said, I've come to this after a very long time.
So if
And
you just want to listen, it's okay. I mean, I
no,
won't
no,
press you.
but I guess I wanted to ask, when, as you were reviewing or discussing and dialogue regarding the Bani, are there, well, like what level of interpretation have you also delved into the historical context of at least what some schools of thought say as to when or what context this Bani may have come in history?
We, to be honest with you, ours is a very doctrinal focus.
Okay.
We do touch on history now and then, but primarily it is, we talk about the message and
Okay.
and the doctrine and more. I think if I had to answer you, it is more theological than anything else. But having said that, the thing that we are all trying to get out of these discussions and dialogues is what is the takeaway from for me as an individual living a life here in the 21st century? What does this all mean to me?
Right.
How should I mold my life in consonance with the teaching here? That has been the thrust of our discussion. That is not to say that we don't talk about the historical context. We do, but that is not our central focus. And you don't have to make any specific assumptions. You can talk just the way you would feel
Okay.
comfortable.
Okay, so let me spend 5 minutes. If no, well, not 5 minutes, but let me just
A
basically
minute.
say a minute. If you look at this 21st Pauri, it's supported by two sloks, and the two sloks are by Guru Angad Sahib. So if we understand a little bit about the life of Guru Angad Sahib, and then we kind of can get a deeper connection to the Bani, is my opinion, right? So Guru Angad Sahib was the one who knew exactly how love was, because Guru Nanak saw that in him and then gave him the Gurgadi. He also knew what service was, or submission. And this is where the Salam Jawab, someone who's really in their core of their being, knew what it meant to serve and not. Salam Jawab has to do with accepting as well as believing, and like Virji was saying earlier. So Guru Angad Sahib knew the core of that, and that's where the Salam Jawab idea is coming from. But the history part of it, which really connects me to the Pauri, is it is said in one of the Janam Sakhis that Pailana ji happened to hear upon a certain individual called Pai Jodh, who was a Sikh of Guru Nanak, when he was in kind of like a melancholic phase of life where he was doing all of the rituals of going to Vaishno Devi and being popular in his village and in his family, and from a worldly perspective was quote unquote all set, but there was a deep void within his being. And when he heard this, he really understood what he should be pursuing. And this is, on that context, this Pauri makes sense to me, which says that the master who he thought he was serving, the Vaishno Devi, is that master truly giving quote unquote sukh? So jit sevya sukh paiya so sahib sada samali. That sahib, that master who should be served, who truly gives you sukh in the core, sukh, the sukh, right? The with a capital T, and the ultimate sukh, whatever that one wants to interpret to be. And when it's obvious that jit kita paiye apna sakal, when it's obvious that whatever you do, quote unquote, so shall you reap, you probably have covered that multiple times. It's come in Asa Ki Vaar. When it's obvious that your actions are going to be and the result, whatever you act upon is going to have that type of fruit to it, your fruit to your labors, then obviously, logically, you will not walk towards the quote unquote bad path. Buri kyon kali? Kam bura karanda logically doesn't make sense if you've understood that I have to serve the master who is going to give me that ultimate sukh. So therefore, every action you take, keep in mind the long-term consequences of your action. I know Vijay was asking, what's the spiritual aspect of Lambi Nadar? I really don't confine Gurbani to be only spiritual. It's actually literally physical, life-oriented, political, economic, spiritual as well. So any action you do in whatever realm of life, was there long-term consequences? Beware of those. And because, on the one hand, if you have given and submitted to the Sahib, who's going to give you sukh. Fir jo sahib naal na hare, then why would you even do the wrong move so that you may not displease the sahib? Therefore, whatever you do, have make sure that it's in a positive direction and having profit for that.
Thank you, Inderpreet. I'm glad that you've actually brought out the fact that Gurbani is not simply, dealing with what we call spiritual, but it is a whole life philosophy. It's holistic, and therefore acts on everything that you do, whether it's economic, political, and so on. So, but as I said, our focus has tended to be a little. But I think we are now recognizing that we need to inject a little bit of history and a little bit of context as well, because it helps us. Thank you, though. Thank you for the input. Kulwant Kaur Bhenji?
Virji, it's really good. I'm listening to Inderpreet Virji and you all. I'm just taking in good.
Very well.
Yeah.
Anji, Ripudaman Singh ji, anything to add?
Virji, Vaji Khalsa, Vaji Fateh. Only this, that it's salam jawab dono kare. This is a very interesting concept for me personally, because if I was to look back to my life, then maybe the first 20 years I did not question much and accepted whatever came across, and then in the next 20 years I did question a lot, um, uh, everything. So maybe that's because you grow up and you get out into a professional world and you've been taught this with the scientific temperament to question everything, to and that included everything, not just limited to the professional world. And now I am somewhere in the middle, trying to go back to the sahib and not question the sahib. So it's interesting to me that it's not so clear to me, in my life, as to when the acceptance, how to actually accept and not question, and when to question is the right way to question. So that's always a confusion, and I'm still trying to resolve that.
Thank you, Ripudaman. You're in a good place. Being confused is a good place to be. Let me see if I missed it. Hanji, Gurjeet Singh Veer ji.
Hanji Veer ji.
Hanji.
So how I see this one is in continuation to 21, where he finishes Jiske ji Paran hai, kyun sahib mano bisari hai. The sahib is within our mind, and we should always keep a concentration. And the ashki is to be done with that sahib, because you have already mentioned there's an ashik and there's also a mashuk. And there are two sorts of ashkis. There is a ishq majaji and ishq hakiki. But this is more to say about ishq hakiki, because Pancham Pasha has described Gurmukh Sachi Ashki. It means there is also a Chuthi Ashki, which is like, we have been reading Heer Ranja and all this. This is not a Sachi Ashki. The Ashki has to be between the three elements within us. So if you think the Buddhi is a female, Gurmukh Sachi Ashki Jit Pritam Sacha Pai, she has merged into the Pritam, her Mool or Ram. And then Rahe Anand, Nanak Sahaj Samay. I think he's trying to indicate at that angle. Then he says, Ek nahi ashki, but I have seen in the world that he's addressing saintly people. Duje lagge jai, that the buddhi is more in attraction to the man than its mool. Duja is the man, because it took birth later than the mool. Nanak Ashik Kandiye, but he says Bhagats will always accept those people who rahe sadhi rahe samaye. And I think there is some doubt ki kide which samauna hega. If we read from within Gurbani, I think he's trying to indicate that Sachi Bani har paiye harsyu rahe samaye is the interaction within my mool in this cut. Not to go into the avkat, where Kabir ji was saying, Takat mein kaat jo pava. So kat chhad avkat katta va. Not to go into the Trikuti, accepting mind's will, accepting Satgur's will is the Snanak Ashika Kandiye. Change Changa Karmane, I think you have explained it well, that whatever happens, happens in the hukam. You don't accept that God is only giving you sweet lollies. Sometimes He give you a bitter melon as well. So you have to accept it both in the same spirit. So he says, if we are saying that God is only giving us happiness, now it's not the case. It's always says dukh sukh doye dar kapde pehre jaye manuk. It has happened within the lives of all the Bhagats, but they never changed their direction. They stayed stable. Then salam jawab dove kare. Muddon kutha jaye. Salam is when we accept ki we are six, and then Gurbani says hukam hai andar sabko. And when sometime we say I can do something, that's the where the jawab comes in, that we are not accepting it. Salam is, yes, Guru Granth Sahib is the Guru. Ye Guru nu mannana, Guru di ni mannani is a jawab. And it happens because we haven't gone into that depth, that what is happening in the hukam. It says, in janta ke bas kich nahi. So we are jants, but sometime we just forget that. That's our jawab. I think he's want to say, Nanak dove kudiyan. So whether you do the salam, that is also kuda. Jawab is almost kuda as well. So your salam was also kuda. So this action is not good to follow any faith, and you won't obtain any place in the Sachkhand. You can say jit seviyan sukh paiye, so sahib it's my mool, it will take me to Sachkhand. I should always serve him. Jit kita paiye apna. If you accept that if you do something good, you accept the result for it, and you do something bad, you will also get the result for that, then why do we try to think that we can do? We can't do good or bad. Even thinking about that is not acceptable. Manda mulna ki chai. This is, I think, we have been discussing. You could never do someone's bad, neither you could do someone's good. Then why do you put stress that I have done this because I was able to do? If you accept hukam, everything is happening through hukam. Good or bad is only our illusions that we have done good or bad. So if the only way to come out of the lammi nadar is that everything is happening in the hukam. I'm not the doer. The things are done through me. If I accept that, Ju Sahib Nal Nahariye, that's the only way you can be on the side of Sahib. Kis lahe upar kar liya. This is the laha we can obtain for this human life. So Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you. So I see that we've finished our first round, and it's only 9:34. I certainly have no question coming from my end. So what I'm going to do is give you all an opportunity to offer a second round of thoughts. So I'll start with Chetandeep again. So Chetandeep, you've heard Inderpreet and you've heard Tripudaman, Inderpreet and Gurjeet Singh Virji. Any further insights?
I think what Gurjeet Virji said clarifies the Salam Jawab to me, at least to me. Originally, what I was thinking that Nanak dove kudiyan, both are kudiyan, but I think what he said is, or the way he said is that if you are doing both Salam and Jawab, then then your Salam was also kuda. So I think that makes sense to me. I don't have any questions, but in the Pauri, what stood out for me when I was reading this was Jit Seviye, Sukh Paiye, so Sahib Sada Samaliye. So the way I understood this was the word Seviye and Samaliye are basically the equivalent, or what he's saying, the way to do Seva, right? Jit Seviye, Sukh Paiye. So the way to do Seva of the Sahib in this body or slok is to Sada Samaliye, or as we have discussed, to always be in the hukam. That is basically the seva that he is asking us to do, and in this body. And I also want to touch upon the kal, buri kyun kali hai. So again, the buri does not mean, at least to me, bad or I've heard everybody in the first round, and I think what was missing for at least me is like we have always been talking about actions. We've always said we should act with our moral compass, or we should act, or kaal buri kyo kaliye. I think it's more of being in a state of mind rather than actions. The actions will flow out of that state of being. But when he says sakal buri kyun kaliye, he's saying to be in the state of mind of being in hukam rather than of the duja, as he said. I think that's what he means by the word buri here. That can be.
Appreciate that, Chetandeep. I think we are all accustomed to words, and kalna, kal karni immediately conjures up action and industry and hard work or whatever. And I think that's the reason that we get stuck on using these words. And you raise an important point. I mean, we should perhaps divest ourselves of this sort of conditioning as well. But thank you, Dilpreet Singh ji.
And Virji, I was also thinking more about Salam Jawab. And then the other thing which comes to my mind is Siddh Ghost. Because in Siddh Ghost also Guruji is teaching us that how should we communicate if we want to learn something or if we want to explain something also. So he's giving us the way to communicate with others, that how to communicate if we want to learn. In this one, that if we accept someone as our teacher, and then how should our communication go with the teacher? Because he's pointing out on the questioning, because sometimes we ask a question and what is the real intention behind that? Do we really want to learn, or we don't know if we ask a question, and if we don't know the answer, then it is one thing. Or if we know the answer and we want to create a confusion and we want to teach the teacher and show that the teacher doesn't know the answer, and our intention of asking the question is to teach the other person or to create a confusion, and then I think, or if we want to just prove our point, I think then he is saying that our both the actions, that our respecting or accepting somebody as a teacher or acting as a student and then trying to teach, that all the complete discussion is of no use. I think Guruji is teaching us the way to communicate and how to interact, and we have to be very clear when we are asking questions. And if we really want to learn, and then he's giving us some message that this is how you should ask question, otherwise it is of no use, it is waste of time. Is Thank you, Vijay.
Hanji, thank you, Dilpreet. Appreciate that insight. Hanji, Inderpreet Singh, any final thoughts?
Not really. I think there's good coverage of all different ideas. I'm more of an advocate that you obviously you start with the word. You can interpret it. I mean, kal, like I said, does mean, like you said, means action. But I also agree with Virji, who said that actions are a result of the way you think. So it's the how your mind is conditioned, which will result in your actions. At the end of the day, the actions are the ones that will, why would you even think of doing those negative actions? Not bad, but negative actions that are not aligned with hukam. So I think both the mind and the way you think plus actions go hand in hand. There is an action element to it. Discarding the action element, I think, would be doing that whole idea injustice, or Guru's holistic nature injustice. And that's the only part about.
Okay.
I think.
Thank you. No, I think that is much appreciated. We have indeed talked about the somewhat interactive relationship between thought and action, and how that this is not necessarily a sequential linear process that sort of feeds one another. And to your point, I mean, we want to take a very holistic view of things here. Thanks. Anji Kulwant Kaur Panji, do you have any final thoughts on the Pauri, having heard everybody?
Oh no, Vijay, I'm just trying to absorb.
Okay. All right. Ripudaman Singh, how does Salam Jawab sound to you now?
No, It's actually a good discussion, a lot of good learnings. Almost everything has been said. Just wanted to share that the state and the action, right? The way I look at it is that yeah, Virji is right that actions emerge from your state, your psyche, but then the action carves the psyche as well. So both are important and both act on each other.
Yep. Thanks for making that point. Yep. CVG, final thoughts?
Anjiviji, the buddhi can do two actions. Either it can understand or it can, think. We have been told to do jap, not socha sochna ho gayi.
So what is
So
the takeaway from this for us? Daily life. Practical implication ki hai
practically
bhai.
is just to walk in the hukam, if not to put any objection what is happening around me. It is all within the hukam.
Okay.
If we think in a bigger picture, but if you're thinking about it, you don't reach nowhere. But if you're japna, if you're understanding about it, this is the way you will be in a positive sense. But when you're thinking, you would go in the negative mode as well. So
ठीक है जी.
सोचना नहीं है, समझना है. That's, I think, is the
ठीक है
main
जी.
two actions.
ठीक है जी.
Okay जी, वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा,
Khalsa,
वाहिगुरु जी की
Waheguru
फतेह.
Ki Fateh. Chetandeep, takeaway action. 30 seconds. What do you think it is?
I think what we already covered, as Virji was saying, to always live in the hukam is the action for me, at least. That's the
Okay.
kalna. That's the kalna Guru is asking me to do.
Cool. Dilpreet Singh?
Jit kita pai apna. So the takeaway which to me is that we are only writing our future with our today's action. So we should be conscious of our actions, because our actions are writing our own future and the futures of people around us. So I think that is the takeaway. Thank you.
Thank you. And Inderpreet, I know I didn't ask you for a takeaway.
Sorry,
Okay.
I was on mute. I mean, I think a takeaway for me of the 21st party is there are two levels. Choose your sahib wisely, because you have a choice of who you want to follow, and once you follow with all your being.
Okay. Thank you. Ripudaman, do you have any takeaways?
All's been said.
All's been said. Okay.
Yep.
Kulwant Kaur Panji, courtesy to you.
Thank you.
Okay, very well. So I think we've had a really nice discussion, and I really have nothing more to add than to what has already been said. And I appreciate all of you coming on board. Said it all, and much more eloquently than I could ever put in words. So thank you very much, Ji Saryanu, and we'll convene again next week, same time. With that said, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.